Hello, hello, my magical friends. Look how sparkly I am. I love it. It has been forever, it feels like, since I've been on here live with you guys, and I'm so happy to be back to being able to do the lives with you. So what I have started is a questions with a crone, right? Me being the crone. I'm just going to accept the title as it is, right? So this allows me to answer the questions that you guys submit to me, both in Messenger and on the weekly Ask a Crone a Question post that's in the Living a Magical Life Facebook group. So I feel like this is a great way for me to answer those questions without having to, type a gajillion stuff in it. So hello, give me a hello, a thumbs up when you join me. So there are kind of three questions that were the majority of the subject around everything that was submitted to me. But I kind of merged them into two different ones, and I'm going to answer those for you. And the first one had to do with that I wanted to work with first, had to do with they have heard about connecting with the ancestors, right? Like that you should do that, there's a connection that would be beneficial. And the question was, I've heard that this is, something that you should strive to do or may want to be working towards doing. But what's the reason? Like, I know, okay, we call in the ancestors, we call in our guides, we call in the watchers, we call in the god and goddesses possibly, but what is the reason for working with our ancestors? And that's kind of a two-part answer for me. And the first one is that your ancestors, regardless of the connection that you had in life, right? And you may not have even had a connection in life. Like you may not have never ever known your great grandfather, right? Obviously, your paths didn't cross in the physical plane in your lifetime here. But that still remains that he is a blood connection, and sometimes it's not even blood in this day and age, but it's a connection, a family connection, an ancestor of yours. So what's the purpose of ancestral guides, right? I put them into the lump of guides, which includes spirit guides, ancestors, angels, ascended masters to me, okay? And wandering spirits too, but that's another whole subject. So what is their purpose? Well, your ancestral guides are there primarily to protect and correct, okay? So that's the first part. So they have a special connection to you that in their purpose is to, again, protect you and to correct you. So your protection comes along with, of course, your guardian angels, your main CEO guide, right? To protect, to make sure that you stay physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually protected, okay? The second is to correct, and that goes along with what's your life path, right? Not life purpose, but what's your life path in the moment. So when we get too far off of our life path, what we have decided in the moment that we are right now in this period of our life that we're working on, because it morphs and changes, right? Along with our purpose throughout our lifetime. When we steer too far off of that path, your guides, and especially your ancestral guides, are there to correct you, right? To say, no, you got to go over here, right? No, stay away from excessive drug use. No, don't, just like we do with our 2-year-olds, right? Like, no, don't do that. Let's redirect your attention over to something that's going to be more purposeful for you, that's going to give you knowledge and help propel you forward, okay? So that's the correction part of it. It's that parent, right? Going, no, don't do that. We want to go and do this, okay? So that's the first part of it. Then, and what I feel is a major benefit of working with your ancestors when it comes to your spell work. If you do any kind of magical working, any time of spell work whatsoever, you usually will call, well, I shouldn't say usually. Some people will call in their ancestors, the watchtowers, if you follow a specific tradition, gods and goddesses, right? Why do we do that? Well, we do that so that they can lend us their abilities. Now, keeping in mind that gods and goddesses, the pantheon that you work with, are not physical people. They are personification of traits and abilities. Okay? Now, your ancestors were physical people, right? People that walked in the physical plane at one time or another, whether it was in connection with you directly or previous to you, right? Your ancestors walked in the physical plane, in a human body. And that makes them so much more powerful for two reasons when it comes to helping us. For two reasons. Is one, that they have that direct extra, let's call it that for lack of better terms, connection to you, right? They have that purpose of protection and correction for you, okay? So that leads them to be a little bit more in tune with what your kind of whole energy field is. And second, let me take a drink here. Hey, look at my sparkly new thing. It's super sparkly on here. Oh my gosh. Okay. And the next thing that's really important and great about working with ancestors is that they understand the human limitations. That's huge, because your angels have never walked in physical. They don't understand, well, there's a few of the archangels, but they don't understand the physical limitations. They can, I shouldn't say that. It's not that they don't understand it, they can comprehend it. But just as if, somebody has gone through something that you feel that you can understand, but you haven't really experienced it, right? So you don't have a full understanding. Hopefully that makes sense. So that's the same thing when it comes to guides that have walked in the physical plane to those that have never walked in the physical plane, such as your spirit guides and your angels, right? They don't comprehend what physical human limitation is. And we have a lot of limitations compared to them. We have a limitation of time and space that they don't have, right? So if you have an ancestor that has walked in physical, understands the human limitations, but is now on the other side, they can, one, help you to work your magic beyond those limitations. Okay, so they can, for easy understanding, they can take what you're sending out and work with it on that side so that it gets into the correct energy flow for you. Okay? That's what that kind of bump is in working with the ancestors. Because again, they can move and tweak things in a way where you're not thinking about how things work on the other side until you have been there, right? Like the experience. You're not going to have the experience until you've been there. So you can't fully understand what it would be like to have no time and space limitations. If you could be everywhere all at one time, there is no time and space. You're everywhere all at once, right? So for us to even try and comprehend that with a human mind, it just, what we call, blows our mind, right? Like you can't even really comprehend it. They can. So when you call in your ancestors, when you're working with your ancestors, you have that. The last benefit of working with ancestors and why it's beneficial to connect with them, not only in magical workings, but in all the time, is that the ones that have connection with you in life are ones that people will call on for their strengths. But the ones that you never had connection with in life, like great-great-great-grandpa, right, that you never knew, he may have some abilities and traits that you're looking for or calling for that he can lend to you, okay? So when you get to spirit state, your energy is infinite. Your ability to take a little piece of your personal energy and give it to somebody else never depletes you. And that's amazing. And that's how I work with my spirit casting companions, right? Like when you work with companions that I have created or that I have offered, it is because I can do that because the energy never depletes. So you're able to work with infinite people. You're not giving your personal self, you're giving an essence of your knowledge and or trait and or experience. Hopefully that makes sense. Give me a thumbs up if that kind of makes sense to you, right? So you can work with grandma's ability to cook, for example. Like you're doing something that creating something, you want to get into the kitchen and make something and you're like, Grams, I'm going to need some help with this. Like guide me to let me know things that work together. Or maybe then you intuitively go, oh, you know what? I should add this spice because I'm not sure what it really does, but I just feel like it's going to be amazing in here, right? Like that's working with your ancestors. So you're able to go beyond your own personal knowledge and scope of personality and traits to be able to pull in theirs to help you. So their strong suits become your strong suits as well when you're working with them. Okay? So hopefully that answered the question or kind of gave something to think about maybe when it comes to, okay, I know we're supposed to work with our ancestors and people call in their ancestors, but why? What's the importance of working with ancestors? Now, I feel like when you're doing spell work, you should have your magical arsenal team, right, that you work with. You call in your guides, your spirits, your ancestors, whatever it is that you want to work with, or all of them that you want to work with. And those are the reasons. But specifically for ancestral guides, it is because you have that special connection, so they go over, above, and beyond to protect and correct you, and then also to lend you their wisdom and guidance. So in my example, again, I have lineage, right? And I have a great-great-grandmother that may have, psychic knowledge or magical abilities or understanding that I don't have. So if I call upon the ancestors, and it doesn't have to be specific, if you don't know your true ancestors, if you're adopted, or something like that, you don't know your true ancestors, again, your ancestors do not have to be blood, okay? When I say ancestors. So if you're adopted into a family, you have no clue about who biological family is, your ancestors are the ones that you know, but you get double benefit because you never disconnect from the blood relatives either. So now you have ones that you unknowingly can add magical and strengths to you. Okay, so ancestors are amazing to work with. You should totally be working with ancestors, but that is the reason why that I have for you. Okay, so hopefully, again, that answered questions for you. If you want me to expand on it, let me know. Hit me a message, put it in the group, the LML group, and we'll go further into working with ancestors. No problem. So another question that came up was, anything that can propel me spiritually forward in connecting with, spirit guides, ancestors, divine, the spirit realm, basically. The first thing is that you have to do shadow work, and that leads into the third question. And this is the two that I kind of lumped together. So you have to do shadow work. If you want to connect with spirit, you have to remove a lot of the blockages that are subconsciously and unknowingly blocking you from that connection. The only way you can do that is through shadow work. And there's a process. For the person that asked it, for anyone else, I have a course called Discover Your Intuition that is a 7-week process. It takes you step by step. It's not me saying, this is how I do it, now you go do it, because you're not going to connect with your gifts the same way that I connect with my gifts, or you're not going to connect with your guides the same way that I connect with my guides, right? We all have our own special way of receiving our information from divine, spirit, guides, universe, all, whatever you decide to call it, right? So shadow work removes a lot of the egotistical thoughts and beliefs that we're holding on to that really aren't our truths. So you have to come to understand what those are. Once you get the ego out of the way, then your intuition can bloom and grow, and you can have a more connective kind of feel to everything. That doesn't mean that some people never do shadow work and they can connect just fine. Okay? But if you're really struggling and you're thinking and you're going, I really want to, but it's just not happening for me, it may be that you're having some issues in the shadow work kind of area and what you need to let go of. Okay. 2 is working with your guides as if they're already there and your best friends, because they are. Okay. So I always tell people when they say, what's the best thing to do to start working with my guides? I always will say, you guys have heard me say this, for the last 12 years, bring yourself back to your kindergarten state. You want to be playing with your imaginary best friend. Okay. Although this friend is not imaginary, as in what we consider imaginary, right? It is a kindergartner playing with a friend. But this is where you believe that you're actually working with your guides and talking with your guides or spirit or divine or whoever it is that you're wanting to call in from energetic realm, okay, from astral realm. So you're going to interact with, you're going to talk to, you're going to pretend like you're dancing with, whatever it is, you're going to include them like you would as if somebody else was in the room with you. Because what happens is, as you do that, the blockage a lot of times comes from your belief. You don't believe you're doing it. It's because when it happens, it becomes so easy. It is so easy, and it's ease and flow that you go, it can't be this easy. But it really is. We overcomplicate it, right? The ego steps in, starts talking logic, and we overcomplicate it for ourselves. So you're going to interact as if this person or your guide, let's say, I always suggest working with your guides first, because they can be your spirit door bouncers, right? That your guide is there. If you don't know what your guide's name is, ask. If a name comes to you, use that name. Because you know what? They don't care what you call them. They really don't. Do they have names? They have sounds that they will react to. But again, whole nother kind of thing, right? So, because here's what happens. When you start working with your guides that way, and you start interacting with them, and you start talking to them, and you start working with them that way, one time you're going to say something, or you're going to ask for something, or you're going to do something, and you're going to feel the response from that guide. You're going to feel something physically. Whether it's a pull, whether it's a push, whether it's something that just popped in, whether it's a voice that you heard inside or outside of your head, right? Something is going to happen, and it's going to scare the shit out of you probably, because you're going to go, whoa, did that just happen to me, right? Or you might be a little bit freaked out, because a lot of the times it's our fear that's stopping it, even though we don't recognize we have the fear. Again, shadow work, right? But so it's going to happen. Once that does the first time, it will never not happen again. It'll always happen for you. When you go to connect with your guides, you're going to know that you're connecting with your guides. Why? Because you believe it now, because you had a physical response to it. We as humans, in our human limited mind, correlate experience to belief. And that simply is something that you have to learn to kind of disconnect a little bit in that thought process, because there are things that we have to believe that we cannot experience, see, hear, feel, right? We just have to believe, kind of like faith, right? But once that experience happens, and it will never feel like it's unattainable for you again. All of a sudden, things are just going to be like, oh yeah, that's a sign. Oh my gosh, yeah, that's a sign. Then hindsight becomes 2020, right? We start thinking about all the stuff in the background and that's happened to us, where we go, well, I wasn't blindsided at all like I thought I was. I should have saw those signs coming from a mile away, right? It all opens up for us. So then what is shadow work? So shadow work can be hard. Why? Because we have to deal with our own personal truths. We have to deal with things that scare us. We have to recognize the fears that we hold within ourselves, and we have to recognize that we have to let some stuff go, that we're the ones that are causing the pain on ourselves, and it's nobody else's fault. And we don't like to do that as humans, right? We like to, play the blame game on something else. So let me back up real quick for the spirit things when you're working and wanting to connect with. Another great way, besides playing with your best friend, right, is to use forms of divination, whatever that may be for you. Whether that's oracle cards, tarot cards, pendulums, scrying, whatever it is, work with the divination because you begin to gain trust with yourself. When you're working the divination for yourself, make sure that you step into a space where you believe yourself. Because there's nothing worse than working through something and having no belief in it, because then it's just a waste of time and energy. Okay, so divination forms are amazing. So how to do shadow work? There are a couple different things that I want to talk about for shadow work. A lot of people will correlate shadow work with the dark to new moon phase, right? If you don't correlate to phases, and if you don't work with lunar phases, you're still a damn powerful witch, I'm sure. Not everybody does. I always say, you do you, witchy poo, right? That's the way to live your life and work your practice, whatever works for you. So you can do shadow work at any time. If you do, kind of work with the lunar phases, dark to new moon phase is, dark to witch's new moon phase is the best time to be working your shadow work in the waning cycle, right? When the moon is dark. That's the time for rest, contemplation, inward looking, planning, right? All that kind of area and time. So how do you start doing shadow work? The first thing that I always recommend is beginning to be aware of your reactions and responses, because those are two different things, right? Reactions come from gut, from emotion, from ego, and response comes from logical thought process, thinking about what you're saying before you do it, right? Thinking about the consequences of things. Those are responses as compared to immediate reactions. So the first thing is to notice when you're judging somebody, when you're criticizing somebody, when you're blaming somebody else, stop and just pause. Stop and just pause. And then you have to ask yourself, what in yourself are you avoiding by focusing on externally? That's a big one, right? Because that brings in all different kinds of aspects of ourselves that we don't like to look at. When you begin to do that, you begin to peel away all the things that are like layers against the veil, I call it, right? Like we've all heard of the veil, whatever you want that to mean for yourself, the metaphoric layer, right? That separates us from spirit, divine, source, one, all, God, again, whatever you decide to call it. So we have to peel away those layers of ourselves to allow us to become closer and closer, or allow us to open up, right? We peel away those human sheets, if you will, in our minds. So when you're judging somebody else and you're going, well, what are you judging them for? What is it in me that doesn't like what they are doing, saying, acting like, or have an opinion about? That's hard. Because we just think, well, I have my opinion because I know that it's right in my mind, or that person just doesn't understand all the facts, right? Or they're just being flooded with misinformation, or whatever it is, right? So when we stop and we think, what is it in me that makes me want to react to that? Then we begin to uncover our personal truths. When we criticize somebody else about something, why would we criticize somebody else about a way that they choose to do something? Doesn't mean that it's any better than the way we choose to do something. It just means that they have found a different way that works better for them, right? But what is it about the way that they're doing it causes that reaction in you? Then the next one is when you feel jealousy, when you feel anger, when you feel self-pity. Again, you need to take that pause. And then you need to discover why you have, what is it underlying in me? What's underneath that feeling? What is it that's bringing about this jealousy for me? And we can get superficial with it, right? Like you see your boyfriend talking to another girl, you know, another woman or whatever, and you get jealous. Why do you have that response? Then you start asking the whys. And I call it the 5 why way. And if you, again, are in the Discover Your Intuition, the first part of Discover Your Intuition is all about shadow work. It's all about taking away these things. It gives you the exercises step by step. But being able to get to the underlying issue of why you have those reactions allows you to step into your truth. Because you're believing things, your core beliefs, you're believing things in your core because other people have told you that. Or through your experiences of the past, that's what's happened. You were cheated on previously. So now anytime you see somebody that you deem as prettier, right? Or whatever, more whatever than you, that response comes up. It's a response. It's not a reaction. It's a reaction. It's not a response. Other way around. It's a reaction. It's not a response. Because it's your immediate emotional gut thing to do is to go, well, he shouldn't be talking to her, right? Why is he talking to her? Where if you wait and have that reaction, you can think through it, and then you can come to find out that it's, you know, somebody in high school or, you know, whatever it may be, right? So discovering what that underneath feeling is. So any of those emotions, those strong emotions that come up like that, any actions of judging, criticizing, that's when we need to take pause. And that's when you need to jot those things down. Because obviously if you're out, you know, 1 a.m. in a bar with your boyfriend and he's talking to somebody, you're not going to take out your journal and sit down and go, okay, now let me do my 5 why way and figure out what's this feeling that I'm having? What's it stemming from? But jot it down. Take out your phone, record it, put it in your, you know, your notes on your phone, whatever you have available. Write it on a napkin at the bar, you know, so that the next day or two, when you feel the urge to go back and reevaluate it, you can do that, and you can get to your response. Okay, you can get to that underneath feeling. What's your core belief that's making you act that way? The next one is seeing yourself in other people. That's a hard one too. Shadow work. Seeing yourself in other people. Can you put yourself in that person's shoes? And a lot of times we go, oh, I'm an empath. We're all empaths. We're not special when it comes to that. I'm an empath, right? And I can feel their emotion, and I can feel what they're feeling, and that's great. The shadow work part of it is now put yourself in their shoes. You can feel what it is. Now put yourself in their shoes. Practice seeing yourself in other people. Because when that crazy person is yelling at the cashier because the price isn't right on their, you know, toilet paper today, I don't know, you can sit back and go, you know what? I could totally see myself in that situation. The other day, I was totally frustrated because I was running late to a doctor's appointment, and, you know, somebody was sitting on their phone. You know what I'm saying? Like you put yourself in that situation, because then you can resolve yourself from becoming angered about it, because you go, what? I can relate. Okay. So that's a part of shadow work. Another part is practicing responsibility for your emotions and reactions rather than blaming other people. You and you alone are responsible for the way that you react and respond to your emotions. Plain and simple. I think that one's pretty self-explanatory, right? You have to be responsible for it. You can't blame. When something happens, don't blame somebody else. It doesn't matter what it is. Don't blame somebody else for things that happen to you or because of your own actions. It's on you. And that allows us to come to an understanding about our shadow thoughts, what our fears are. Remind yourself what's true. When we get to our core beliefs and when we start to strip away, again, the stories that other people have told us that are true. So hopefully that helps. Those are kind of my little small things of working with shadow self. Those are the main ones that I feel you need to work with. But again, there's a process to it that makes it easier. But those are the points. Anybody can do it. It's taking, the time to journal out. If you want to journal out and then throw it away or burn it, that's fine too. But when we start to work with our shadow self, again, it leads us to our personal truth. And then the other things and what other people are doing no longer bother us because it doesn't affect us, right? It doesn't matter what everybody else is doing. It only matters what your life is doing. Okay, so hopefully that helped in that. And the last thing that I want to say about it all is keep in mind that everybody that you come into contact with has a different truth about you. Okay, so the guy at the gas station, the beggar at the grocery store, your mom, your spouse, your brother, your best friend, everybody has a different truth of who you are. And that makes all of those connections different in responses and reactions when it comes to issues that can arise within those relationships, right? We know what our core truths are. We are the only ones that know what our core truths are. We know who we are. You are the only one. So when you're working with all these other people that think that they know who the true you is, that's where confrontation comes up. That's where misalignments happen, right? That's where misunderstandings stem from. Well, I thought I knew you. Well, guess what? You didn't. So we have to keep in mind on the flip side of that what we hold as a person's truth, what we feel that we know of that person, isn't really the full truth because only they know it. We can only work with what we're exposed to and what we're experienced with. And that's what makes all of us work so well together when we come together and with that understanding. Because that's the way that we can move forward in all aspects and areas when it comes to life and living, right? Is to just come together with the understanding that everybody has their own reality that they're dealing with. Yes, we have an agreed upon reality as well, but each person, each soul, each individual has their own reality that they're working within too. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this little questions with a crone session. Again, if you have any questions or anything, make sure that you post them in the Living a Magical Life Facebook group or message me. If you want different understanding, maybe I can give different examples to make things a little bit clearer. I do have, and I know I told you guys, I have the Manifesting with Magic that's going to be coming out. The workbook that goes with it is delayed a little bit, so it'll probably not come out until next week, but I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, so get out there and make sure that you hold 1000% belief in yourself, because again, you are the one that knows that everything that in your reality is created by you and your heart and truth. Okay, have a wonderfully magical rest of your day.